The influencer marketing industry is set to grow to approximately 21 billion in 2023, and according to a survey by Influencer Marketing Hub, 23% of their respondents intend to spend more than 40% of their entire marketing budget on influencer campaigns. Yet it remains a complex area with many marketing leaders trying to figure out where it sits and how to measure it properly. Hi, I'm Conor Byrne, and you are listening to That's What I Call Marketing, the podcast where you will hear from the leading lights in the marketing world and listen to their unique insights. So today I'm talking all things influencer with Vanessa Sawyerr, founder of the agency Get Stuff Done, where she is the matchmaker of multicultural talent and brands. Her agency's focus is to amplify multicultural voices through influencer marketing and beyond. Vanessa has appeared on BBC News and Channel 5, been a guest on the podcast series Influence, a judge for the annual Blogosphere Awards, and she's a regular speaker and expert on all things influencer business. So today I talked to Vanessa about her views on the influencer marketing space, the roles these creators play in the lives of those that follow them, and that's not too overstated, but really thinking about what brands make sense for creators to work with and how chasing the money just doesn't really work for them. Vanessa has some wonderful advice for creators who are starting out, with some stark warnings to people about some of the representatives that are out there. And we get into some wonderful real life examples of her work with her clients like Lavana Bach, Flavia Benko and Ashley Louise, and the work they're doing with brands. And we also talk incredibly about Vanessa's near-death experience. I really hope you enjoy this episode. Vanessa, thanks a million for joining me on That's What I Call Marketing. It's great to have you here.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm really, really excited.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, listen, let's get straight into it. I'd love to hear a bit about you, your story, but first of all, let's start with Get Stuff Done. Tell me a bit about Get Stuff Done and what it's all about and what you're hoping to achieve.
Yeah, so Get Stuff Done is a influencer marketing agency. We represent talent, and our niche is representing multicultural talent. So at the moment, we've got talent that are of African, Caribbean, and South Asian heritage based in the UK. And my whole goal and vision is to amplify multicultural voices and experiences in the UK and beyond, and from small screen to big.
Amazing. And you obviously, you've set this up for a reason, right? You're doing this for a reason. Underrepresentation is a huge issue in the influencer marketing and creator space.
100%. I feel like, yes, we all live in the UK, but we are, for want of a better saying, a melting pot of experiences. So the way I would put it is, my husband and I are both African background, but his is Black African from Ghana, and mine is South Indian heritage from Mauritius. Okay. So culturally, we have a lot of crossovers, food, etc. But our household is still mixed in terms of cultures. Whereas my next door neighbours, they are English from the north of England, and their household is very different from ours. So I want to be able to showcase that with the creators that we represent and the talent that the creators we represent and the content that we create.
Yeah. And then, am I right? Do I hear a Scottish accent in there?
Yeah, just to mix it up a little bit. Yeah, I've actually been in London for, trying to figure it out last night, I think like 23 or 24 years. So more than half my life. So my accent is definitely softer than it would be if I was living in Glasgow. However, we have a Glasgow contingent in London, so when we get together, it is Glasgow returns.
Is it like the elevation of the accent? I adore the Scottish accent. My aunt was from Scotland, and just, as a child, then I was like, because she's the most beautiful person. I was like, that's the most beautiful accent in the world. So there you go.
Lovely.
So I'd love to understand a bit about some of the I guess, core marketing beliefs that you have that you apply to the work that you do? Like, what are the things that you kind of believe are really important from a marketing perspective when you're working with brands and creators?
And I hate to say it, but it's authenticity.
Right. Yeah.
You know, the truth is, for me, everything in the world comes down to is underpinned by common sense. And I know people will say that common sense isn't common, but for me, it's like we buy based on recommendation. Before influencer marketing,
Mm-hmm.
there was word of mouth. And for me, influencer marketing is the evolution of word of mouth, right? So for me, the belief is authenticity. I will tell you that we went to the most amazing restaurant. You have to go there, and
Mm-hmm.
this is the food. And you, because you trust me, you believe me, and because we're friends, you're going to go. And if I've told you a lie, you'll come back and go, I'm never going to trust you again.
Yeah.
So we just need to be really authentic with the content that we're creating, and the reviews and the opinions and everything that we're putting out there, good, bad, or indifferent. I feel like there's an element, a large percentage of influencers or creators, they're so caught up in money
Mm-hmm.
that they're chasing the money, that
Yeah.
it's like, oh, this person's doing really well, I'm going to follow them. But it's so not who they are as an individual, you know?
Yeah.
And I feel like we need to go back to that. Like, let's tell the truth, because people can see through it. And that's where we then come around to de-influencing, which is
Yeah.
really annoying.
Yeah. um, it's interesting on that point of like the restaurant example is a brilliant one. I did hospitality many moons ago,
So,
and actually I didn't go into it because I nearly burnt a restaurant down. But anyway, that's a whole other story. Yeah, I was not a great chef, but in college we had a lecturer, and at the time there was no social media, there was no mobile phones. Right, I'm really
yeah.
aging myself here. But he used to say, like, if someone comes into your restaurant and has a good experience, this is the difference, right? If they have a good experience, they'll tell nobody, right? If they have a bad experience, they'll tell 9 people. Now, I think the stat was made up, but his point was the bad experience actually got out there faster. But what kind of is interesting there, maybe with influencers, is they seem to tell the good story, right? And so actually that bad. So if they're working with let's say a restaurant, and they're going in and they're having an experience, if they've bad experience, they're probably not going to tell that because it may reflect badly on them as, oh, don't work with them. They'll tell the truth. Like, is that a big challenge that has to be overcome? And how do you overcome it?
Ooh. So yes, it's a huge.
Woo!
How do you
It's
fix
a
it?
biggie.
It is. It's a huge challenge, and naturally, marketeers are not going to gravitate to those that are fully truthful because of the fear. But we need to overcome the fear. We need to go as much with the good and the bad. And I agree with you. I think one bad experience or thing outweighs 10 good things.
Yeah.
However, what we need to remember is it's all about that nurturing the relationships. And these influencers have built a community. And if you just tell them all the good stuff, they're going to drop off. They're not going to trust you. So you absolutely need to be telling the truth. And from a brand's perspective, own it
Yeah.
rather than worry about, because people are going to go out there and badmouth your brand anyway, or their experience. Just own it. Come back and say, right, be public about it. Get together with that influencer and say, how can we do better? Record that experience, put it out there and say, you know what? We heard what you said. We know that you're influential. What can we do better? Come in. Let me give you a consultant job. Like, work with the influencer to say how it can be done better. Don't leave it out there for everyone to say, oh, I'm never going there again, or I'm never buying that, or, because you've got a bigger hill to climb then,
Yeah.
for the next launch that you do or the next product that you bring out, you've got a bigger hill to climb. Nip it in the bud, bring the person in, and you will gain traction from that influencer's audience as well. Because
Yeah.
they'll turn around, they literally will turn around and go, my God, did you see that brand? That was great, because that's what audiences do.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and again, it probably goes back to that authenticity piece. Can't say that. But it's hard for an Irish person. But that piece of saying, yeah, we haven't done it well, and we can do. There's loads of examples of brands that do that, and people do, really enjoy that. I did want to ask one question actually before we go too far into it. Is it influencer? Is it creator? What is the right term? And not that it's massively important, but I'm just interested because it seems to be. I know TikTok are like, well, they're creators, not influencers. So like, does it matter, or is it just like kind of?
I don't think it matters, to be honest. Everyone's creating content and everyone is influential. Yeah. That's it at the end of the day. I'm not a content creator, nor am I a influencer in the true, meaning of the term is being put out there. However, I do create content and I do influence people, namely my husband.
Yeah, micro influencer, but an influencer. So a question then for, I think a lot of brands and marketing organizations struggle a bit with where this sits. Is it PR and comms? Is it social? Is it performance? Like where does it sit in an organization? What's your view on that?
I think it sits across all of the above. Like, right. I feel, sorry, I feel like, why do we have to box everything? Because, that's how we were taught. That's how, companies were set up. But we can evolve. We literally can evolve. It's like, my background in B2B marketing, for example, it was like there's marketing and there's sales, but we had to work together because it's like, marketing was always seen as the lower run of the, the hierarchy, and then sales were up here because they drove sales, but so did we. And if we worked together, we drove more sales, right? So I feel like companies need to evolve in their mindset because, yes, we need it sits in PR because there is that broader piece of creating awareness. But absolutely, we're doing it to drive sales. So then it has to, we have to look at the marketing piece and we have to look at the data. So it sits across all of them.
Yeah. And so then when a brand is, thinking about this, because I don't think it, sorry, this is wrong. It's not, I don't think all brands think about it. I think possibly younger, newer brands are able to do this faster because, they can see that it has a place. And there's some great examples of brands that do that. But maybe it's for some of the more mature brands, that's where they kind of struggle. And what would your advice, or if you're talking to somebody in kind of a large organization that hasn't really got their head around this, what would you say to them about how to get started and how to think about it?
I would say to them, work with an agency that knows what they're doing and bring that agency in to work with you as opposed to just, giving the marketing. We need to do influencer marketing, giving it to them. Learning doesn't stop, right? We have to continuously learn. And that also means in the larger organizations, because the truth is, if we don't do that, as the older generation, that may be us or one above us, as they start to retire out of those roles and the new people coming, their mindset is different. They are going to struggle in the traditional marketing PR setup, So they need to work with organizations, work with agencies, bring them in-house almost, so that they can set up a new kind of way of working.
Yeah. And actually it's really interesting at that point, like, we have to do influencer marketing. Like, it's probably just the wrong starting point. Like, it's the wrong question to ask, or, the wrong conversation is, we should do influencer marketing. What? Like, why?
Why?
It probably goes back to all the good stuff. Like, what's the business challenge? And then can influencer marketing be a part of that answer? And what is that, how does that look then?
Yeah,
And,
100%.
and then to the other point you were making there about kind of maybe a newer, younger generation, like have their heads around this. And so, even within an organization, I think talking to people who are living it, I
Yeah.
have a team in Australia, and there's a girl on the team who is, fascinated by food. And so she uses her Instagram and she posts about, her food experience. And she's, a bit of an influencer in that space. And it's fascinating her bringing that world into our world of
Hmm.
work and saying, here's some ideas I think we could do. And you're like, wow, like that's not, I never thought about it, but it's just, she gets it. And so I think
Yeah.
that's even the agency model as well, is where you don't have that skills, bringing an agency in that does can really help. And then how do you think about, to that point, of the reach of influencers? Like there's different types. We talked, the micro influencer to the large scale reach. How do you think about that? And do you have different on your roster of creators that you work with? Do you have kind of a range of large and small?
So ours are mainly micro influencers. They always have been. Um, I say they always have been, but the agency's not, from an
Yeah.
influencer perspective, hasn't been going that long. So yeah, they're micro influencers, and for me, it's more about the community that they've built and the quality that they put out there and their work ethic. And then I'll work with them. If you are someone that's in that wants to become an influencer or is creating content for clout, um, just to be seen and to chase that money, it's not someone that I personally would work with. So I think it's all about quality,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it's all about the engagement, the true engagement that you have with your community. And I'm not talking about numbers. I'm literally talking about what value do you provide to your community, you know?
Yeah.
And then we've got something to talk about.
Okay, that's interesting. So you're less concerned about if someone has 2,000 or 20,000 or 200,000 followers. It's more about is it the engagement? And so then is that the metric you look at? So if they post something, that the percentage of people that follow them that are engaging with them.
Yeah, 100%, 100%, because that's the true meaning of influencer, right? They're influencing people to engage with their content, whether it's to buy something or not. It's just someone to engage in that conversation. Conversation builds community, community builds opportunity. So yeah, that's very much how I look at it.
And then how do you work with brands on the metric piece? Because that's a huge piece, right? And I think anything in the social space has always struggled, right? Because people are like, well, does that, do likes
Yeah,
matter, for example,
yeah.
right? And so with this, like, how do you engage with the brands you work with, the creators, to get meaningful results? And then what are the metrics that you look at?
I think the truth is, where we are with the various different platforms, working with brands directly cuts the platform out. So no matter what quality, what metrics, the content is going to be downgraded on the platforms. We've seen it, everybody's seeing it. So it's now about building the relationship with the brands and them seeing the relationship that the creator has with their audience. So yes, they're always going to ask me like follower numbers, insights, etc. But I'm seeing it matter less and less now, and more about the engagement that they have prior to the actual ad going live, if that makes sense. So when we give the results back, they just want to see it, but there's never any disappointment or anything like that. They know what to expect. The platforms aren't making money when we go direct to the brand, so they know they have to spend money behind it, or just know that they've got some great content and created some awareness out there.
Okay, so the brands are less concerned with a sale, for example, right? If you're working
For
with,
now.
I don't, right? Okay, so their view is, so this falls more into probably awareness or consideration for the brand, that people are experiencing it, and so they're less concerned about the tracking the direct ROI.
Yeah, I'm seeing it less and less. I'll be honest with you.
That's fascinating.
I know I'm not so worried about the metrics at the moment. It's more about the quality, and that plays into where I see the industry or where I see creators moving. As we move forward.
I think that's fascinating, and I say that in a world of, I don't want to use the recession word, right? But there's challenges, right? Like marketing budgets are under pressure, right? And so the attribution to revenue that I see across, people I talk to and just my own organization is intense, right? The need to actually prove almost everything that we're doing has that return. And so being able to say we're going to work with influencers, but we can't actually attribute it, like that seems like a massive hill for people.
Yeah, it is. I think as well, traditionally, from a marketing perspective, I look forward to recession years, because let's face it, the marketing budgets increase, right? We see more where maybe a consumer needs to see something 9 times before they make a purchasing decision. In a recession year, they might need to see it 15 to 20 times. Therefore, marketing budgets increase accordingly. So for me, recession years have always been great. I loved it, especially working in sponsorship. This has been very different. This is the first time it's been very different, where, marketing budgets have been tighter, but we haven't seen a drop. In fact, like, we've had the best start to a year than we've ever had before.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, my forecast for the end of the year, I'm like, oh, we need to change that. We've had the best start, but again, I think it's being very specific about the content that we're creating and the creators that we work with, to make sure that we're amplifying that multicultural experience in the UK. So I think maybe we have a different slant, and that helps. I don't know is the honest truth. Our focus is very much to work with brands and with agencies to help them and make sure that when they're working with multicultural talent, that the briefs are right, for example, that they're culturally relevant. So we're creating some strategic partnerships with some bigger agencies to make sure that we are part of that conversation, even at pitch stage,
Right. Okay. That is really, really interesting as well. I think being in a space where, what's interesting, I think what you're talking about is you've got a very specific area of focus, right? You're working with people that are true and authentic in that space. And so for brands who are trying to navigate that space, coming to you just makes a ton of sense, right? And actually probably doing it through broad reach advertising might be more difficult. So this kind of, what kind of brands are you working with?
So we're working with skincare, baby brands. So can I mention brand names?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So, for example, for the last 2 years, one of our creatives, Flavia Benko, she's a mom, she's a flight attendant, she's a wife. I don't know how she does it all. She does it, and she creates the most exceptional quality videos. She's been a brand ambassador for Dove for 2 years. We're going on to the 3rd year. And who else? We're working with Fisher Price. I can't think. We work with a number of beauty brands like Beauty Pie. We love Beauty Pie. We're at Beauty Pie. I can't think. Skincare, lifestyle, there's no limit. We've just signed up one of the ladies she's brand ambassador for Bosch for this year. So they're going to be showcasing some of their home appliances, small home appliances, which is quite cool. So
yeah, that's really, a very different like wide ranging. And so then when that works, you're obviously brands or agencies are coming to you, you know, with client X, business problem Y, and then you're kind of going, okay, I think I have, you know, this person or that person, or are they coming to you saying, we're really interested in this creator and we want to work with them? Or like, does it work both ways? Right.
Both. And also, like, we're building a bigger creator network, so that, you know, we can't represent everyone exclusively. Again, I'm not someone that's like, oh, they're amazing, I've got to represent them. I get a lot of people calling me for us to represent them, but, you know, there's only so much I can do. And we put a lot into the people that we exclusively represent in order to grow them. So we're building a wider network, because I feel like there's people creating great content out there. They don't appear in, you know, when it comes to the performance tools, they don't appear in those results. So I want to give them some opportunities. So we're building that network at the moment, which is great. We've got about coming on to 300 people on there and just building it out slowly.
Amazing. Who do you admire in the space? Like what brands, bar the ones you work with, of course, you're all phenomenal. But which brands do you think have done this well and have kind of got their heads around it?
So we have worked with them, as I said, for the last couple of years. It's Dove.
Okay.
They've really, really got their head around it and understood what, like, their ambassadors and bringing their community with them means to the brand. And it's not just on the product side, it's on the purpose side. So, you know, they've always had purpose built into the business, which I wasn't aware of, into the brand. And really using their influencer community to raise awareness of those purpose-driven goals, I think is been great, you know. So I think they do it exceptionally well. I think McDonald's as well do it exceptionally well.
Oh, really?
You know, we were part of their Raise Their Arches campaign.
Were you?
Yeah, so one of the ladies that I represent, her platform is actually Twitter. That's her primary.
I didn't mean to say, I'm on Twitter, but like,
no, but again, that's her primary platform, and she's grown a really loyal community there, and brands are sleeping on it. You know, she's number one Twitter Spaces host in the world. She does Love Island recaps every single night. You know, you've constantly got media on there looking for quotes for the next day regarding Love Island, and she's the one that's driving that. And brands are very much sleeping on the value of Twitter at the moment.
Yeah, what's her name?
I understand why. Ashley Louise.
Okay, have to
so she has a show called Talks with Ash, and her hashtag is often trending.
That's brilliant. Yeah, I think it is interesting. Twitter is an interesting space at the moment, because, you know, you see a lot of people kind of going, should we be on it? Should we not be on it? And, you know, it's a challenge. I think it's a challenging one. And sorry, back to Dove. I think Dove is a fascinating brand. And I think again, all the things you've talked about, it makes a lot of sense for Dove to be working, you know, with you and the creators, because they've been about that authentic message for so long. They're probably one of the first brands to really, I'll get this wrong, but they were definitely an early brand thinking about purpose. And, you know, and, you know, there's lots of questions about purpose, you know. I mean, there was that famous thing, was it last year, where one of the investors was it Unilever said, like, you know, does Hellmann's need a purpose more than just being mayonnaise you put on a sandwich, right? So, but I think Dove had that kind of, they've had some beautiful campaigns through the years and very effective work as well. They weren't just award winning; they were great campaigns. So you can see why and how they would work with influencers, and in a more, you know, not that large scale, kind of, as you said, let's call them micro, for want of a different term. It is a risky space for brands. What can brands do to de-risk and, you know, engaging with creators and influencers? And I mean, what I mean by that is, you can't control what happens in their life. There's lots of examples. So what's your advice or thoughts on that?
For me, it's building relationship with the community of influencers that you're working with and that you want to work with. Understand that they're not just a platform and they're not just a publisher for you. They're actually human beings and they have life issues and they go through things. So understand that and treat them as human beings and not just as a number. However, I do understand that comes down to time as well. So often, we work with some agency and the brand has given them 2 weeks to turn around and get content through the door. And it's like, I can't really care if she's sick. I just need the content. So I think there's a balance there. But for me, it's everything is underpinned by relationships, right?
And yeah, I mean, it is. I get that piece, but then what happens when the influencer or creator you're working with goes off and does something stupid, and goes and gets themselves, messed up in country X and, whatever, what does a brand do in that situation? Right. And, there's tons of examples of, big influencers, but also small ones that kind of make mistakes that then reflect ultimately badly on the brand that they're working with.
Well, I don't think it's any different from when, they work with celebrities and VIPs and they cut ties, It's exactly
West,
the same. Right, exactly. So I don't think it's any different. You've got to look at your priority is the brand reputation at the end of the day. So if an influencer is attached to you and they have, made a mistake and even if they, they're remorseful after, at the end of the day, your priority, you can reach out to them and have an honest conversation. But at the end of the day, brand reputation is the most important thing if you are the recruiting brand. So cut ties. It is what it is,
Yeah.
But again, there's a person at the end of that. So just have a conversation with them and say, this is what's going to happen. We're fully supportive of you as an individual. However, this is business at the end of the day. Let's not get too caught up in the emotion of it.
Yeah, and I guess there are other examples of people who have, this has happened to them and they come out the other side because, as you say, we're all human beings and we make mistakes. And I guess if you're putting yourself out there, there's two parts. I think one, people are often looking to take you down.
Yeah.
Because I go, look at them. look at them. They think they're brilliant. Yeah, there's that part. And so the people look for it. I can't remember the second part, but there you go. I think I think it is an interesting, it's an interesting thing, but I do think that, companies, I think before they get into the space, it is something that they worry about. Like, well, what happens if? And so that can hold people back as well.
Yeah, but as I said, it's no different because brands have worked with celebrities and VIPs for years, so they know what to do in that circumstance to do exactly the same thing. There's no difference.
Yeah, it is. It's definitely it's a really interesting space. And I was reading, Adidas potentially are going to lose a ton of revenue, right? And and they couldn't have seen that coming.
No, not at all.
One of the things then is, do you have any not issues, but brands obviously have guidelines, right? We've got our brand guidelines. This is our voice. This is whatever, and then creators are creators and they want to create. How do you bring those two together so that it allows the creator the freedom to create, but that they're not hemmed in to the brand guidelines, but not going off the guidelines too far?
Making sure that we get a creative concept agreed before we go ahead and film. That's the measure of it. The creator has a look at the brief. They come back with a concept. I will share it. If the brand comes back and says, no, we want to do X, Y, Z, there's always backwards and forwards. But at the end of the day, the response from me is always like, the reason why you want to work with them is because of their content. If you try and put that in a perfect brand box, you may as well go down the route of actors, just go and hire a space, do a casting, give them a script and let them do it that way. If you want to work with creators, allow them to do it in the voice that is authentic to them and recognizable by their audience. And then you'll get the traction that you're looking for.
And probably going back to the trust and the relationship, build that trust, and you'll find, 100%. Find. And it is I think it's a challenge with any creative process. Like we were just chatting to an agency last night about kind of creating some concepts for us and more of a brand, scale, and part of it was like, how do we articulate the brand values that we have, but without hemming them in to say, because we need something quite different, without hemming them in and saying you have to stick to this. And so it's really it's a tough one. And then I think you're right, like that you say to them, look, we trust and let's work together really closely, because I said to them, I said, look, I please don't go away for 3 weeks and come back with an idea, because that'll just be disappointing for everybody. Yeah.
Of course.
It doesn't work. And in terms then of platforms, interestingly, mentioning obviously Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, are you working with people across all platforms? Do you see some working better for other things than, is Twitter better for one thing, like the TV show, or is Instagram better for food and fashion?
I think from my perspective, Twitter is great now for actual conversation.
Right.
Obviously, people go backwards and forwards with their tweets, but actually, Spaces has created that platform for conversation. Instagram is great for recommendation quality content. And Twitter is good for that. It's almost like the in between of the two. You've got an opinion. You're quite happy to do it front facing, and you can do it on TikTok. And also for trends, TikTok definitely sets the platform for setting trends for sure.
Are there any? We've kind of touched on it a bit, like that there's a huge amount of content out there, and a lot of it just looks wonderful and people's lives are great and all that. Are there any risks that we're creating for the audience? Like I have kids and young kids, but I have a daughter who's 12 and she's not on social yet, but that's coming, right? And I worry about the exposure she'll get to the perfect lives that people and creators put out there, and the pressure it puts on them. And there's some horrendous stories of kids that have been badly impacted by that, and I worry about it. And do you feel there's a risk of that we're creating this world that's so perfect and unrealistic?
100%. We fought for years about size 0 in magazines. We've gone back there, whether it be like size 0 or, the hourglass with the BBL and, abs 100%. We're that the platforms are giving, space for people to showcase unhealthy images of what life should be like. And it is down to the platforms to take responsibility for that. 100%.
And because here's my thing, I don't think they will.
No.
I don't think they will, because there's too much money in it.
Yeah.
What can your creators, like, do you think they have a role to play in it?
I mean, I think that just goes back to them being who they are and being authentic and showing true life, Lavina Back, for example, she's a new mum, a new wife, and she will be very honest about she's giving an unfiltered view of motherhood, where she's ready to go out and Sage is sick all over her, or, Sage had a punami explosion in the train when they were on the way to London. She shows that very yes, I'm a new mom, and yes, absolutely in love with my child. and so is the whole world, it seems, at the moment, is in love with Sage. But this is the truth of motherhood.
Yeah.
I'm not sleeping. Like, Sage is full of beans, so she doesn't sleep. She's 5 months old and she's not sleeping. Like, I'm exhausted. So I think it's important that those images, the truth, is
Yeah.
shown out there, and not just look at me laugh. It's wonderful, and this
Well,
one little part of
yeah.
my living room that looks amazing, and the rest of my house is a joke. Like,
Yeah. I mean, look at the mess here.
that's not so bad at all.
Two dogs on the floor and
Love that. Love that.
but I do, yeah, I think that's, and maybe then, Davina is going to be somebody who is, maybe she is, already, but will be more super successful because, and again, it goes back to your very start point with authentic. But having that, and then saying this is real, because there are so many out there that's like, oh, my wonderful life, and and look, I do it as well on my Instagram, like lovely picture of my kids and we're all happy. I did post one once of like before and after where like there was an ice cream incident, and I was just like, that's hilarious. But I think like I do it, and I'm like, oh look, the smiley happy pictures, which is great because you do want, those are wonderful moments that should be shared. But I think that of how we kind of take ownership, and I think seeing that and having creators that are going, actually, I'm telling the full story, because that's then real life, and people will kind of be drawn into it.
100%.
You mentioned B2B marketing earlier. Do you work with any B2B brands?
No, not in the influencer space. No. The B2B side for me was in events. So I was at Haymarket Publishing, PR Week, SE Magazine, and did all that. So that was on the event side. But it is coming. Like, I think it's a growing space. LinkedIn are definitely plugged into the creator voices in there. And as actually the entrepreneurship side of people grow, I think that element of the B2B influencer, and I'm really interested in it.
Well, I think it's fascinating as well. I think there's a huge untapped opportunity. I just don't know what it is. But I think, because I think here's the thing. I think in B2B, and I've talked to a few people on the podcast about this. I think in B2B, we somehow, when we go into B2B marketing, we create these personas in our head of people as unrealistic, business person, persona X, they're this, and they're in an office, and they're human beings, and they get the train to work, they're in the car. Like, I think that reality somehow gets lost in B2B marketing. And so,
100%. There was someone that did it really well, like a cybersecurity company did it really well, and they did a marketing campaign. I can't remember who it was, but that marketing campaign was for cybersecurity solutions for work, but it was TV advertising, and I can't remember who it was, because I think, like you say, what people forget is that CTO or CISO or whoever they are, they're a human being. They're watching TV, they're reading publications, they're reading the newspaper, they're scrolling through Instagram. There's the crossover there. You're targeting them as a consumer. They're going to take that information and put it into, go to work with it. And that's where I think the crossover is that people are kind of missing. And I've seen one company do it. They did it with Intel. Intel did a great pull-through marketing activation. Do you not remember? Intel did all that that whole TV advertising of Ding Ding. I can't remember what it was.
Yeah.
We couldn't go and say, we couldn't go to Intel and buy a computer. But what it did for us as consumers is that we went into the shop and said, we want an Intel processor, because that pull-through marketing piece was really, really genius for me. So I think it's going to be the same with the B2B side of things. Well, I hope so.
Yeah, I think. Well, I think probably again, it's a thing where people are trying to figure it out, and you know, with most things, again, I probably tie it to budgets are tight for people, and so that's a challenge. But I think there's probably an opportunity for people to test it and
Yeah.
see how it might work. But I think the challenge of B2B is going back to that point earlier of we're going to look to tie it to revenue attribution, and that's I think a
Yeah.
challenge for
Especially B2B.
agencies and influencers to try figure that out, because
Yeah.
without that, I think it's going to be a
Yeah.
slow burner for people.
Yeah. 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 You have a point.
Um, Before we finish, I did want to touch on your story a bit, and it's phenomenal. You'll tell it better than I can, but you were one of the people that not only got COVID but got massively impacted by COVID.
Hugely. Yeah. So actually, it's coming on to 3 years now this month. So I was, the 3 years have gone really quick. I was one of the first people, the first wave of catching COVID. Still not
Okay.
sure how. Um, but yeah, I caught it and I just wasn't feeling very well. And after a couple of days, we were having work done in our flat. And we decided to book an Airbnb just to get away from the dust. And my husband came home and was like, "Oh, have you packed?" And I just couldn't lift my head. And he checked my temperature, and it was like 39.4. And he was like, "Not panicking. Let's just go by the hospital on the way to the
Okay.
Airbnb." So when we got in there, within 5 minutes, the doctor came and saw me and said, "Oh, we think we're about 90% sure you've got the virus, and the best way is for your lungs to rest. So we're going to put you into an induced coma." That point, I was so exhausted, and also they didn't know then because it was right at the beginning. It was like February.
Oh right. Oh
Um,
wow.
um, March, the beginning of March. Um, they didn't know that actually maybe ventilation wouldn't be the best thing to do. So I literally signed the form. I was like, yeah, sure, no worries. Signed the form. Dudley was told to go home and isolate for a couple of weeks. And I woke up. I don't remember anything, but after signing that form, I was so exhausted. I think I just passed out. But I woke up and it was like 4, 5 weeks later,
Oh.
and I thought it was 48 hours later. Um,
Oh
and
my god.
then, yeah, so basically, a couple of weeks after they ventilated me, they induced me into the coma. They phoned Dudley and said to him, "She's not going to survive the day." And then another consultant came in from another hospital, decided to try a different treatment called
Oh
ECMO, which basically is a machine that cleans your blood. So takes your blood, drains your blood from your body, cleans it, oxygenates it, and puts it back into your body. And there was only 16 machines in the UK at the time. I was the second person to be put on to the machine, and luckily for me, it worked.
oh
And
wow.
yeah, when I woke up, when they took me off that machine, I was meant to be ventilated for another 3 weeks. But after a couple of days, I kind of woke up myself. They started turning down the gases, and I woke up. And if I'm honest, I'm so lucky
Mm.
because when you go on ECMO, you lose like your extremities gradually die because the blood's drained from your whole body and you've got these machines keeping all your
Oh
organs going. So a lot of people that have ECMO end up with amputations from the foot
no.
to hands and stuff. So literally the worst that I've come out is that I've lost a lot of hearing on my right side. I've got a frozen shoulder and I've got some nerve damage on my left leg. But me, I'm someone out there was looking after me.
Oh wow. Oh
Yeah.
my god. That is phenomenal. How has that changed you? I mean, that like there's such a huge thing to go through.
Massively. I'm still seeking. I think one of the things that I realized is that I've got purpose in life, and I'm not entirely sure what that purpose is yet. And I feel like that's why I was, came through this, and the big person saved me and chose me out of all the people that were in, in intensive care. They chose me. I was the only person chosen for that operation and for that opportunity. So I'm still seeking my purpose, and maybe it will become clear now, or maybe it will come clear in the future. I don't know. But I think for me, it's just taking every day as a true blessing and enjoying life and living for now. I just, as the doctors always say, you're so positive. And I'm like, oh, I'm alive.
Yeah, and it's amazing, and and maybe your purpose is what you're doing, because you're connecting people, you're finding a way to bring communities together, and in a very authentic way, and you're maybe that's it, and that's I think there's a wonderful thing there, and you're helping people, like, in a way. Like, I know sometimes when you're in a business, you don't often see the broader picture. I'm not getting real purposeful on you, but I just think maybe this is it. And if people have a better understanding of each other and communities as a result of your work, maybe this is your purpose. I don't know.
Maybe. I mean, for me, like, there's a lot of people that come to me. I had a conversation with a girl yesterday, and I asked her, we're not taking any talent on at the moment. But I said to her, are you looking for management? And she said, I'm not really in the position to take on management yet because I can't afford it. I'm like, what do you mean you can't afford it? I said, you don't pay for management. I said, it's a payment on results.
Yeah.
We bring you opportunities in, we take a percentage of it. And I said, but we put a lot of time into helping you get opportunities, etc. And she went, oh, that's not what I've been told. There's people that say to me that I've got to pay a retainer. And I'm like, what?
Wow.
It's insane, because influencer marketing has created, so many opportunities, but people that, and I wasn't an agent before, someone came and asked me to be their agent, and that's how I fell into this space. But my background is sales. My background is sponsorship. My background is building relationships. So it's transferable skills. But when I'm hearing this, like, people want to charge talent to be on their books, come on.
Oh, yeah. That's shocking. And so there you go, right? You weren't able to take her on, but she's gone away knowing, don't work with those people. So, 100%. Vanessa, thank you so much for your time today. It's been wonderful speaking to you. You are an incredibly positive person. Just even in this exchange here, you've got a wonderful energy about you, and I wish you the best of success with Get Stuff Done and the work that you're doing. I genuinely believe that it's hugely important, and I say maybe this is the purpose.
Maybe. No, thank you for having me. Thank you for asking me to come on. I really, really loved it.
I love when Vanessa talks about being an influencer. I do influence people, namely my husband. I thought that was great. And as I said at the end, I find Vanessa to be an incredibly positive person. She radiates energy when you talk to her. We certainly work in a world now where being able to prove ROI is essential. That's not new, but I think it's definitely more and more important. And I think this is probably something that needs to be worked on a bit more for the influencer space to get closer to that. But at the same time, understanding the place it has in your marketing mix is important to figure out. It has evolved and matured, and I have seen firsthand the impact it can have on brand health metrics in a market where we have had no other brand investment. So I would love to hear your views on this topic. That's it for this episode. Thanks for listening to That's What I Call Marketing. If you did enjoy it, please do share, add comments with your feedback. You can, of course, get in touch with me and find all previous episodes on that'swhatIcallmarketing.com. Follow us on Instagram on That's What I Call Marketing. On Twitter, that's _marketing. And now you can watch our episodes back on YouTube. Yes, You guessed it, you'll find us at That's What I Call Marketing. So from me, Conor Byrne, thanks for listening, or if you watched, thanks for watching. And until the next episode, take care.